Good morning, Inspector.
Right. Good morning, and is everyone available here?
We appear to have everybody, yes, this morning. The lady that's requested to join the session hasn't yet joined, but I have sent her the link.
Right, thank you. Well, in that case, can everyone hear me? Is that yeah? So the inquiry's resumed, and just like to say, just make sure that that you try and comply with all the different procedures for the whole inquiry, as I outlined before. And I can see someone's got their hand up. Yes, Ms. Graham-Paul.
Good morning, sir. I hope you can hear me. The internet is a little bit unstable. Mr. Howell-Williams is just trying to join the inquiry, but is having some technical difficulties. But he is in the room with me, so we can proceed, but he may have to come onto my screen or something.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. There are. I've had these problems before, but yeah. Yes, right. Thank you. Thanks for so we can continue anyway without him having a screen.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, well, that helps.
Mr. Howell-Williams should be joining any second. Just admitted him.
Right. Thank you. Right. Anyway, yes, I can see that he's now come up on the screen. So what I'd like to say is just make sure you try and comply with the whole procedure, which is raising your hand, but when you need to speak, but keeping your mics on mute and video, unless you're actually taking part, your video off. Just like to say that I was contacted this morning by email, well, via the case officer, about someone else who wished to speak, but I think they're not here at the moment, so I think we'll just carry on and see when they turn up. I did say that they could. It's a third party. I did say that they could speak after 9:30 this morning, but that they haven't actually come into the onto the Zoom for in time to do that. Are there any matters that anyone else would like to raise before I move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the trees round robin? Right. No one else. Oh, sorry. Mr. White. Yes.
Yes, I'm trying to be a good boy today by remembering the protocol, putting my hand up. I've got one point that arises from yesterday, and you asked, in the context, you asked a query about the plans and any changes. Can I just make the point that, as I understand it, the plans that were submitted to the LPA were the ones that it was determined. It was submitted in April 21. It was determined in September 21 by the LPA. So my understanding is the plans remained unchanged at the point of determination. And also, this is not a Wheatcroft situation. There are no amendments that you need to consider post the refusal as well.
Right. Thank you, Mr. White. That's fine. I've got a hand up from my program officer, Caroline Williams. Yes.
I've just had a reply back from Miss Lazelle. She said she's working at the moment, so it's difficult for her to actually join the session. So she will come back to me.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we've got a timetable. Her on the timetable, really, it would have been yesterday that she would have been heard. But like I say, I can slot people in, but she's got to be reasonably flexible as well as to when she can actually come. Because if it basically, anyway, she's not here, but I think she certainly should be willing, if she's that concerned, to actually find time to be accommodated on this inquiry timetable. But if she's not, I don't know whether it's possible to let her know that if she can just put in a written statement, and that will be taken on board anyway, rather than actually needing to come and give a verbal statement at the inquiry. Sorry, Mr. White.
Yes, sir. Can I, in the gentlest possible way, also just emphasise from the appellant's point of view, as you know, that the procedural rules allow the appellant the right to the final say, so to speak. Now, understandably, and with our agreement, we've agreed to topic by topic, and that's eminently sensible. But I would be concerned if we do various topics, finish those, and then third parties wish to comment post those sessions, because obviously you'll have heard the evidence from the appellant. And can I just flag up to those members of that it is quite important, and in the interest of fairness, that once we put to bed a topic, in a sense, it's put to bed. Otherwise, it might necessitate having to recall someone. So I completely endorse your hope and aspiration that we deal with third parties at the appropriate time. Obviously, if people can't be available, then there might be mitigating factors. But of course, the reason why the third parties go first is that the appellant retains the right of reply to a degree.
Yes, thank you, Mr. White. Yeah, I don't know who, if you can communicate, Ms. Williams, to this
Inspector, I've had another email from the lady concerned. I forwarded it to your case officer. I think probably it's worth you speaking with her at the break, and you'll understand what's the content of the emails about.
Right, because really she can just send in something, and then the appellant will be able to consider it and I will be able to. So she doesn't actually have to speak. But anyway, so there should be something coming to me anyway.
Yes, I have told her that she can send in a statement, but I think it's probably easier if you read that email, and then I'll butt out of the inquiry as of now and still be here, obviously, and we can cover that later. Right,
thank you. That's helpful. So what I'll do then, I'll open this round table session, and it's regarding trees. Now, I'm aware of those people who have been put forward as taking part. So I'm assuming that they're the ones that will be here. Now, for the council, there's Phil Cook. So is he present?
Yes, I am, sir.
And for the appellant, I've been given the names of 3 people: Simon Jones, Asher Ross, and Jeremy Smith. Are they all present?
Simon Jones present, sir.
Jeremy Smith, morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Right, so that's them, and then also someone from the Kent Wildlife Trust who introduced himself yesterday, Neil Coombs. Is he present? Who'd like to take part in this?
Good morning, sir. I wish to clarify that I work for Kent Wildlife Trust Consultancy Services, and we are here at the request of Tenterden Town Council. I'm not engaged or to represent the Wildlife Trust.
Right. So you're representing the consultancy services on behalf of the council. Yes.
That's correct, sir. Yes.
Right. Okay. So as far as I'm concerned, you're going to be the main people that will take part, and I think in terms of keeping this to a reasonably orderly fashion, we're taking on board statements that have been made by other parties as well, but it's best if they don't take part, especially as they're, well, I can see that the objectors are really being represented by Mr. Coombs, who's giving consultancy advice. So I don't know whether everyone's aware of the agenda that I've put forward. Hopefully it covers most of the contentious points. And I'll try and stick with that agenda if I can. But like I say, that there will be chances for people to put their views forward on each issue, and then work. But it is a fairly flexible agenda, but it's just a reminder of some of the matters that were raised, really. So what I'd like to do first is move to the first topic on the agenda. Right, now what's the best way? Because I've got quite a few people involved, but certainly I can ask each individual. The first topic is the necessity of removing this horse chestnut tree T43, why it's needed to be removed, and I don't know who the best person to address that from the appellant's point of view is.
Probably me, I would think, sir. Mr. Jones.
Right, thank you.
Good morning. Why does this tree have to be removed? It has to be removed because it is so close to the proposed access to the site from Appledore Road that it cannot be retained. And I believe that is agreed by all parties. Whilst the tree's trunk is actually just outside the footprint of the, what you might call the bell mouth of the tree, of the access, it is so close that it would not be feasible to keep it. The buttress roots extend 900 millimeters from the center of the trunk, adjacent to where the proposed curb would be, and to put in the curb haunching would cut off very big and large roots and render the tree unstable. Furthermore, the trunk itself, even if you could get over that first issue, the trunk itself is within the highway sight line, and therefore it can't be removed for that reason either. So that's the reason it has to be removed.
Right, thank you. And there's no disputing that as to that point. So really the next thing really is its impact, the loss, as it's going to have to be taken out. So really the impact is, I mean, these trees have now been TPO'd, I believe. Is that the case?
That's correct, sir.
Yeah. And so the impact is a removal of one of the TPO trees along this avenue, but there's no other TPO trees being removed along the avenue, are there?
Not to be removed, sir, but on the other side of the bell mouth, that is the western side, there is a recently planted oak tree, which is being included in the TPO. It's TPO T17, and it is currently a young tree. It was planted in the autumn of 2020. It's around about 3 meters in height and has a trunk diameter of around about 37.5 millimeters. It's not included in the original tree survey that you will find in our original report at core document 1.13. It wasn't there at the time that survey was undertaken, And B, had it been there, it would have been too small to meet the criteria for inclusion in a pre-development survey. That tree has the same issue as tree 43. It is so close to the bell mouth of the proposed access that it can't be retained. However, that doesn't mean it has to be lost, because it is so small it could readily be transplanted, perhaps a couple of meters to the west or wherever County Council deems it appropriate to do it. So it's worth making that point clear.
But there's no objection as such to the removal or the loss of this tree then?
I've not heard or seen one, sir, no.
Right. I'll just check on. So really, in terms of the impact, well, the contribution of this tree first, can you say of all the trees really, but the actual contribution of these two trees, or in particular the horse chestnut T43, to the whole avenue, and also, I mean, they've been TPO'd, so they've been taken on board that they do have an important function in terms of being TPO'd. So they've got to meet the requirements of being TPO'd. So they are important trees in terms of amenity and whatever. So can you say what effect this would have on that TPO'd line of trees, in your opinion, Mr. Jones, as you're here at the moment?
Yes. Well, can I say firstly that we mustn't fall into the trap of thinking that the making of a TPO adds any added value to a tree. The tree is of value because it is of value. Making a TPO on a tree does not add any other value. So the fact that it's been made a TPO, I don't think makes the tree any more or any less valuable in either case. When it comes to tree 43, the horse chestnut, my view is, having looked at this from in a couple of ways, is that it does meet the government criteria for the making of a tree protection order, and so it's not one that it's not an order I would object to. When it comes to tree T17, the small replacement tree, that doesn't meet the criteria for a tree preservation order in terms of its contribution to amenity at present, but it is acceptable to make TPOs on trees to safeguard their future contribution to amenity, and therefore that's also not a tree that I would object to the making of a TPO on. So in terms of the contribution that this tree makes to the avenue of trees, I think we should differentiate here between the contribution it makes to the avenue of trees and the contribution it makes to the landscape. And the contribution it makes to the landscape, I will defer to my colleague, the landscape witness, Mr. Smith, who is on this call, and he will be better qualified to tell you that. In terms of its contribution to the avenue of trees, you will have seen from my proof that this is an avenue which was originally planted, I understand, but I haven't had it confirmed, by the town council back in the 1870s, most probably, which was around about the same time as the avenue of trees down Tenterden High Street was planted. Originally, it contained 84 trees. That's 42 pairs of trees. And each pair was of the same species. And alternatively, they were horse chestnuts and limes all the way down. So 2 horse chestnuts opposite each other, 2 limes opposite each other, 2 horse chestnuts opposite each other, and all the way down. And this stretches from the junction of Appledore Road with East, I've forgotten the word, East Lane, East Hill, East, sorry, I've forgotten the name of the road. And it stretches all the way down past the site. It's around about 1.15 kilometres in length. Now, since that time, a considerable number of those trees have been removed, or are, put it this way, are no longer there. It's unknown to us exactly why they've been removed. We can conjecture that some of them may have fallen prey to disease or to decay. 1 or 2 of them, particularly one on the south side opposite the most western access to Shrubcote, was pretty certainly removed to allow the building of that road. I suspect, but I can't confirm, that others were probably lost because when all the houses were built along Appledore Road, the crossovers to the road may well have damaged roots, allowing for the ingress of decay organisms. With the result that of the 84 trees, 35 are no longer there. So in terms of the pattern and composition of this avenue, this is already quite fragmented. That's a big percentage of trees that were originally planted that have gone. However, there have been some replacement trees planted. There's 21 in total. 13 of those are quite recent and very young, being planted in the last 2 or 3 years. But there are 1 or 2 others which are now semi-mature trees. These haven't been planted in the same locations as the 35 trees that have been lost, and they haven't been planted using the same species. So consequently, the assuredly once formal aspect of the avenue has been fragmented and made less formal, less consistent. And with the differences in species now appearing, it's a slightly different form of avenue which is evolving, which is coming into being. But it remains an avenue, and it remains one where it does give an arboricultural character to the road. So the removal of this tree, what's the impact on the avenue such as it is now? Well, 35 of the original trees have already been removed. This would be the 36th. I'm not quite sure why the 36th would be any worse than the 35th or the 34th or the 33rd, or indeed any other. Particularly when this tree is within a section of the avenue which has got probably the densest tree cover. There are 11 other trees within 30 metres. There's 24 trees within 60 metres, of which 11 of those are actually mature trees. This is a big contrast with 1 or 2 trees further to the west, where there are only, in some cases, 2 other trees within 60 metres of them. Removal of a tree in that section of the avenue would have a much, would leave a much larger gap than the removal of this tree, which, as I say, is surrounded by many others. Consequently, I don't find that this tree is prominent because it's screened by so many others. And whilst, of course, it is readily visible in short-range views from Appledore Road, that's all a question of perspective. If you go and stand next to a tree, it's always going to be very prominent. It loses its prominence the further away you travel from it. And in my proof of evidence, I've said that clear views where I think it's readily prominent are restricted to 45 metres to the east and 35 metres to the west. But now I think I will defer to Mr. Smith on the wider impact of its loss on the avenue of trees.
Right, thank you, Mr. Jones. I'll let the council reply to all of this, but I'll hear from Mr. Smith on the is it, yes, Mr. Smith on the landscape. Right, thank you, thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, sir. So from my point of view, sir, as Mr. Jones said, I'm looking at things from a landscape and visual point of view. So I'm assessing the effect of the loss of tree 43 on views and on landscape, or in this case, streetscape character. And so in that context, first of all, I would draw your attention to the landscape statement of common ground.
So can I just interrupt? I've got a hand up from Mr. Howell Williams.
Yes, sir. It's just to seek your help on one matter. I had, and I'm sure it's my fault, contemplated that this section was to be focused on the arboricultural evidence. And I was just slightly surprised when there were 3 representatives to speak on behalf of the appellant in this context. Now, Mr. Withercombe is here now, and you will see his name on the list. I'm sure he'd be happy to contribute at this stage in the roundtable session in relation to landscape matters as opposed to arboricultural matters. I had thought that that was to be dealt with under the heading of landscape, but bearing in mind these are judgment issues, I think it's whatever helps you best, sir, so long as...
Well, I was expecting more to do with trees, but the appellant, I did ask for other people to be present at this. I think it was actually on a draft timetable that was put forward with names on, but I don't know whether you actually had a look at it or were given it, but it was circulated anyway. There were some names of people who were wanting to who were going to take part, and it had the council's names and then the appellant's names of people who were going to take part. But I certainly don't want to stray too much into landscape, but the thing I was thinking was that if it's dealt with in this round table session, some of the matters hopefully won't. It might help with reducing the actual cross-examination session, but I don't know whether that's going to be the case. I don't want to stray too much into the other areas, really. But so Mr. White has asked to speak as well. I think Mr. Howell Williams was muted then, but
I beg your pardon.
Sorry, Mr. Howell Williams first then, if you'd like to say something first.
Only that I agree with you, sir, that there is the potential to save time down the line. The danger must be not to just simply repeat evidence. And I noted Mr. Ross has offered to speak again, although he's neither an expert on arboricultural matters nor an expert on landscape or visual impact matters. So I'm
not sure what his role will be, unless it's just to make sure everything's tied up. I don't know,
I'm sure Mr. White can deal with that. If I think I would be quite content if Mr. Withercombe wants to contribute to the landscape impact session on the basis that these are matters of judgment, and it's a good way to help you in the context of the contribution of the tree T43 to the avenue. I'm quite happy with that. I can see some good sense in it. He's ready, as you know, because he's due to give evidence shortly after, and I can see that there might be some good saving of time so that you have everything in one place.
Right, thank you. So Mr. White has got his hand up as well. So
yeah, so just to, I'm going to give a submission of agreement with both of you. As you said, it was absolutely clear when you asked who were the participants in the roundtable. Mr. Ross' presence, Mr. Smith's presence were clearly identified last week on the timetable. Secondly, I think there is sense, because this reason of refusal goes so, the actual allegations so clearly the effect, what the council allege is on the effect on amenity. If you look at the reason of refusal, particularly under this, the allegation is the tree's loss would be detrimental to the character of the area. Now, I don't think you can deal with reason of refusal free, frankly, without looking at the effect. It's not said that the tree itself is of such importance it shouldn't be lost, like T381. What the allegation of the council is that its loss would be detrimental to the character of the area. So I think it's inevitable that you have to, as you've shown on your agenda, you put impact of its loss. I think it must be right that Mr. Smith and Mr. Withercombe participate now to deal with the reason of refusal in one place, frankly. And I had always assumed that was the way how we would deal with reason of refusal. Free, frankly, in this way as it's evolving. And also, last point, just not that Mr. Ross needs any protection, but of course, fundamental to the reason of refusal free is an allegation of breach of policies. So that's why Mr. Ross, Mr. Howell Williams can shake his head as much as he wants, but that's the reality. The policies are.
I don't really want to go into policy.
Fine. But then if you don't,
I think it's better to go into policy on a cross-examination session. I think this is more to do with the visual impact and the contribution that it makes to whatever. I think I don't really want to go into policy in this one. I think it would just get too complicated then.
Well, you made that absolutely clear, and then we'll save our questions for policy for Ms. Goodyear and Mr. Ross to deal with when they give evidence.
Yeah, I've deliberately missed policy out of this agenda for that reason.
Fine.
So,
great.
But thank you anyway for outlining that. I've now got Mr. Howell Williams, who's put his hand up again.
Well, only so just to apologise. I readily acknowledge that I haven't seen a roundtable agenda with the list of names of persons who are expecting to attend. I have an agenda for all sessions, but without any lists of names. So somewhere along the line, I haven't been given that. It's my fault.
Yeah, I think what it was, there was a timetable, a suggested timetable update, and names were put on that timetable. But it might not have got through to you, and I don't know whether it got through to the council, but it did get through to me, and so I based it on that. But anyway, I'm sure we can get around it, and I'm definitely not intending to go through policy at this stage because I don't think it's going to be any help.
No, well, I'm grateful for that clarification. So, Mr.
And also, I'd like to emphasise that I will be able to go and have a look myself. So, in terms of describe, I mean, it's more to do with what I need to look for in terms of when I go out on site, and whether I agree then with which view. And certainly Mr. Jones has put in quite a lot of information there to give as to his opinion. I've got Mr. Cook now, who's raised his hand. So, Mr. Cook. So I can't see you or hear you.
There we go. Morning, sir. I wonder if it would be helpful to you if, in dealing with the wider landscape impact of the removal of T43, once we've heard from Mr. Smith, whether Mr. Withycombe could respond to that, and then afterwards we could retrace our steps and look at the more individual impact and my view on the broader impact. Would that be helpful?
Well, I don't mind, or I can listen to, I mean, I think I'm looking at really the overall impact, but certainly I don't mind which order it's done. I could hear you on the individual impact, but I think the only thing is that there might be an overlap anyway. That's all I was thinking. So what Mr. Smith is going to say might just repeat roughly, or he might agree with what Mr. Jones has said. But anyway, I'll hear from Mr. Smith next and see whether there's a response needed on any of these or whatever from whoever's the best person to deal with it. But thank you, Mr. Cook. Okay. So Mr. Smith, I'm sure you've heard about what's been discussed. So like I say, we're looking really at the impact of trees rather than anything else in this particular session. So, and you're looking at more the broader impact, is that right?
That's true, sir. Yes, I'm looking at effects on character, and I don't need to add a huge weight of evidence on top of what Mr. Jones has already said. I'm really just going to add a couple of additional points, so I'm not going to be taking up a lot of time, sir.
Yes, thank you. So what are these points that you'd like to add?
The first point I would make, sir, is just in terms of the overall character of that streetscape, which I think, to try and abbreviate my evidence on that, I think you could go to the landscape statement of common ground, paragraphs 7, 8 and 9, because it's agreed between the parties that this is a busy road with street lighting, broad footways, signage, frequent traffic. I think also it is agreed in that statement that the trees are varying in their age and condition. So it's not just horse chestnuts and limes. And you've already heard that from Mr. Jones. He's talked about some of the original trees having been removed for various reasons. So in terms of the character, the broader character of that road, it isn't obviously just informed by the trees. It's also the other factors, the fronting housing, for example, the busy road. The trees are, of course, a component of that character. The second point, sir, I would make in reference to a plate within my proof of evidence. And Mr. Jones also has a similar paragraph in his work, plate 7 on page 45 of my proof of evidence. That's CD 7.8, sir.
All right. In your proof of evidence, is it? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Page 40.
Oops, I just all right. Let's get your proof of evidence. Right. Yeah.
Sir, I wonder, whilst you're looking for that page of that document, whether you can ask Mr. Smith if there's any possibility of improving the sound.
Right.
There's quite a lot of distortion. I'm not sure there's anything he can do, but if he could try, I'd be grateful.
Is anyone else experiencing that? Is that just a one-off?
Well, I can hear. It's not the best sound, but I certainly got a reasonable sound that I can hear enough.
Okay.
But,
well, I apologise. I will try and get a little bit closer to the microphone, and hopefully that will help.
It's coming in and out. I'm not sure proximity to the microphone is helpful. I don't know if I'm the only person, but I'm having difficulty picking up every word. I can pick up syllables, then another word. It doesn't give full justice to the evidence you're giving, Mr. Smith.
No, I appreciate you raising it. Is that something that's being experienced?
Mr. Smith, do you have any headphones?
I don't, I'm afraid.
I don't, it's not, it's the connection. Mr. Al Williams is right. It's not the sound, because I know from experience, Mr. Smith, your microphone's immaculate. It's the connection, because you're falling in and out. Is there any way you can improve the internet connection?
I can only suggest that I leave and rejoin.
Well, sir, should we try that briefly?
I mean, yeah, I could.
Not you, Mr. Smith.
No, that's what I mean. I'm not really having a problem with him, but if other people are, then it's not very helpful. But I've just found the plate that Mr. Smith's looking at, plate 7, which is the view. Is that right? The view from Small Hythe Road at Junction.
No, plate Roman 7 on page 45. So it should be a picture down Appledore.
45. Oh, right. Just a minute. Ah, right. There was another plate 7 as well, I think. Yeah, I got the wrong plate 7, but yes, I can see now. Yes. No, it didn't seem to be right. There's other plate 7, but there seems to be.
Would you like me to solve?
Oh no, sorry, that was plate 12. That one, sorry. No, plate 7. I've got it now. Yeah, that's right.
Are you content for me to soldier on? I really don't have that much to say.
Yeah, I think I'll carry on, and because I don't think there's too many. Yeah, I've got that plate up now. Sorry. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. So my point is obviously I have assessed a series of viewpoints down Appledore Road. This is another additional viewpoint. On the preceding page, plate 6, there's another viewpoint slightly further away. So I've considered a number of sequential views along Appledore Road and the visual effects. And the reality is that, first of all, and if you use GLGIA 3 to assess the visual impact, if you like, of that tree on those views, then you have to consider its magnitude, which is page 115 of Glivia 3. I'll put that to one side for now. But so my point is that in these sequential views, T43 occupies a small proportion of the view. But critically, and this is, I don't need to waste a lot of time on this, turning to what Mr. Jones has already said, the point is that T43 is surrounded by other trees, lots of mature trees. And you can see that in that plate 7, sir, that the tree, which is in that image, got a Christmas tree sign on it, just to make it a little bit clearer. You can see it's surrounded by a number of other species. And some of those other specimens are taller than T43. And that's very important because it means that if T43 were to be removed, the tree line in that location would remain pretty much the same. So we have a situation where in this location, where there is a concentration of trees, and I would suggest that, again, without wanting to spend too much time on this, Mr. Jones's appendices to his proof of evidence, that's CD 7.10 and Appendix 3, it shows for the middle section, the middle section of his drawing, It shows not only the trees in the avenue, but also in blue, it shows other important trees or visually significant trees that are found in the streetscape. And I think that really does highlight just how many visually important trees there are in this location. So, sir, my first point was about the general landscape character of this area. My second point is about how this tree sits in relation to other trees in this location. And then my third point, and this is the easiest because Mr. Jones has done all the heavy lifting already, is the pattern of trees along this streetscape and how that pattern has been degraded over many years. And indeed, I know he has said there's been trees that have been removed and additional trees have now been planted. I would just make the additional point on that one, that there are these other trees in the streetscape which are outside of the avenue. And again, Appendix 3 to his proof highlights this. There are other trees which are visually significant, and they play an important role in the character of the streetscape as well. So those are the points I wish to make.
Right, thank you, Mr. Smith. Right, I heard enough. I don't know whether everyone else did, but hopefully you did. So what I'd like to do really,
Ladies and gentlemen, it looks like the inspector's frozen. Just hang on, I'm sure he'll rejoin the session. Ladies and gentlemen, I just had a call from the case officer who is working on behalf of the inspector. We are trying to get hold of him to rejoin the session, so it shouldn't be very long. Ms. Devlin, welcome to the session. Could you stop your video for us, please? We're just waiting for the inspectors to rejoin the session. Ladies and gentlemen, just had a call from the case officer at the Planning Inspectorate. Unfortunately, the Wi-Fi at the Planning Inspectorate in Bristol's has gone down and the inspector is unable to rejoin at the present moment. They are hoping to have it up and running again in 10 minutes. So if you can just bear with us, hopefully it won't be very long. I do apologise for this. It's out with my control.
Do you think, Caroline, we should adjourn till 1:45 then?
I'm not sure I have the authority to say that. You've probably got more experience of running events where we lose it. I've never ever run a live event before where I've lost a stream ever in all the times I've been doing this. So I'm not quite sure. Leanne said she would call me back as soon as possible. I have to keep the live stream running. If you want to pop out and just quickly get a coffee, I can keep an eye on the camera to make sure as soon as he comes back in, we've got everybody that's rejoined. Apologies.
That's not your fault. I'm just thinking for the inspector, it might be easier if he doesn't knowing we've formally risen will take the pressure off, in the sense of he thinks we're all waiting here.
I think that his case officer has spoken to him about it, and he is aware. She's going to keep an eye on the YouTube as well, so that as soon as he rejoins, she can see him in live session.
Okay, all right. So about 10 minutes.
Hopefully, yes. I'll leave my camera on, and I'll come back to you as soon as I know any more.
Thank you.
Huge apologies.
Well, these things happen.
Unfortunately, it's very different in examination in public, but there we are. We're reliant on technology, so hopefully everybody else is all fine. Mr. Smith, your sound's still quite buffering, but I can't do anything more with that because I think that's probably from your end.
I was going to say, that improves at all? I've just been fiddling around with connections. Is that any better, or is it still bad?
No, that's better, I think.
No, it's not very much better, Mr. Smith. I'm sorry. But I can't give you any advice on that.
Well, I see there's advice that tells me to switch the whole thing off and switch it all on again, which I'll be doing at lunch. So I hope that helps.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have got some feedback from the case officer and from the inspector. There is still no Wi-Fi connection for the inspector, so he has asked me on his behalf to formally adjourn this until 11:05. So the session will restart at 11:05. Thank you.